Welcome to another episode of According to Amabile. I'm Michele Amabile, your host, and today I'm very excited because I've got the psychedelic groovy vibes happening with the band that I saw opening for the Bongos at the Wonder Bar. It got a new album out, Soul Bender. It's the album that stirs and bends the soul. And it's all like a nice big soupy mix made in the house of vibes.
Keep on talking.
I know you love all the compliments. Kurt Reil, thank you for joining According to Amabile. So great to see you. I haven't seen you in so long.
I know, it's been ages. I can't remember when.
I feel like we started playing your band on HTG back in the early 90s with that very first record.
Yeah, that was House of Vibes was the first album. Salad Days was the song.
Salad Days.
And
That's
Matt
right.
picked up on it. Matt Pinfield picked up on it. And that he was an early supporter, actually, the station was. So that was really kind of cool. And here we are, all these years later.
And it's a family affair. You
yeah.
and your wife and Kristen and what a great band, and your brother and Dave. It's like the band's been together so long. Did you like play together in the house together, like as kids? Did you start playing badmintons or pretending to be rock stars?
Yeah, a little bit of that. I mean, the real problem with both of us at the time was we were both drummers, so it was hard to play together. Unless we set up two drum kits and kind of did that, but that wasn't that much fun, really. I mean, it was fun, but not for that long. But both of us could play guitar, and at the time, Rick was probably a lot better than I was. So we realized that one of us had to switch, and I kind of got, I figured, well, I may as well switch to drums. It's so much fun for me to play, and little did I know I'd be stuck back there for decades.
Well, it all started in New Jersey. How did your New Jersey roots kind of really fuel this band? Because a lot of Jersey in the lyrics.
Is it really? I don't even know. I guess we're so in it. We're just so in it. I was born here. Rick and I were born in New Jersey, and oddly enough, we come from a couple of streets away from where this band called the Knickerbockers, who did the song "Lies," which we actually covered. Actually about 10 years ago we covered it, but we grew up in early part of our lives were in North Jersey, and then we moved with our family down to Central Jersey around Bridgewater, Somerville area, and then both of us went to school at Rutgers, and that just seemed like the music scene was happening, and it was a good place to start a band. And
no doubt.
Yeah, right. And Kristen came much later when we sort of got gigs in New York. That's when we found her, or she found us. I think she found us. And and then we were boyfriend, girlfriend before she was a member of the band. So it was like, you play guitar, and well, why don't you join? But see, that was weird for me at first because I was a little unsure. And the other thing was we were so into the 60s thing of four young guys with long hair, it's like that was our template. And the woman with the long hair, it was like, okay, well, that can work. But instantly when we got Kristen in, that sort of made us our own band right there. It was like, okay, we're not copycats anymore. We're an actual group. We have songs, and we really started to become our own band. And that coincided with that first album, House of Vibes, which HTG, your old station, picked up on.
Now, talk to me a little bit about the bands that you listen to. There's so much in there.
You mean now or early on?
No, just the earlier influences and how it kind of rolled into Soul Bender.
Yeah. Well, so starting out when we were kids, it was all 60s rock for us. And it was very hard to find. At the time, it was all on vinyl. And they were all out of print. So we couldn't really find any of this music that we were reading about in the Lillian Roxon's The Rock Encyclopedia, or something. We're like, what's that band? So we'd find something at the library. Maybe we got the Best of the Byrds, but good luck finding an actual Byrds album. That was really hard. And the album we did before this one was called Dig. And it was our covers record, kind of our Nuggets album. where we sort of paid homage or tribute to all these bands. And the idea of dig was that you had to dig for the influences back then. And that's what it was like. We had to dig. And it's not only that we dug them, but we had to dig for them. So bands like the Byrds, I said, the Hollies, the Zombies, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, all those bands, the Who, very sort of important to our early sort of vibe. But then when Kristen joined, we were starting to break out of that. And we started to get into bands of that time. We were getting into Nirvana. We were getting into Urge Overkill and Red Cross. And
Love Red Cross.
Yeah, and just that Cheap Trick, of course, was always around. And Big Star was, kind of an influential band for us. So those bands kind of got us, to where we got. And then we were listening to, Oasis and all these bands that sort of had a 60s vibe and a melodic pop vibe, but heavier, is kind of where we've always found ourselves. And so up to present, I think all of those bands are definitely in the mix. I would say I'm looking at the album cover here, which I have right here. So I got the song list. I've been doing a couple of these recently, so I figured I better get the list of songs. And a song like Spinning the Wheel, the third song on the album, I think is very much primal Gripweed song, very much of our sound, which is kind of based on all those bands I talked about. But then you have something like Promise of the Real, which
I was going to ask you about.
Well, then I'll wait on that. You asked me about that. We'll talk about that. Another song like Gene Clark is kind of obviously from the Byrds. Conquer and Divide was written because we did the album Dig. And I was trying to write a song that was like a garage rock song, which are very hard to write because they're so simple. And you have to get real dumb, but you can't do something that's been done before. It's kind of a real fine line to tread. Anyway, long answer to your question.
Well, I think that your sound has also resonated with underground garage listeners, especially Steve Van Zandt, who loved you enough to put out a record on Wicked Cool, which is so cool. And he's been such a supporter. And I really want to know about that relationship with Steve Van Zandt and the cruise. Talk to me about the cruise. That is insane.
That was we'll start with the cruise. Amazing.
Oh, wow. I was so proud of you guys going on that.
It was tremendous. It really was. Not just because we played, but because of all the other bands we were seeing that were so great. And we were, making some connections and also renewing some connections, like the Chesterfield Kings was one. We hadn't seen those guys. So actually, we just played with them fairly recently. But there were a lot of bands that we wanted to see. And so it was very jam-packed. And the crowds were great. And they were all there to see music the kind of music that we were into and we played. So we had a packed room each gig we played. And it was really kind of amazing. We got a couple of standing ovations, which were really like, wow. Which was really great. So that was tremendous. And just to get on that cruise was great. We originally were going to play with Mark Lindsay, who was Paul Revere and the Raiders singer from the 60s, who's another influence of ours. And he couldn't do the show because he had some physical issues, but they had already contracted us to play as well. So there was a time period where we're like, I wonder if we're still going to be on the gig with Mark dropping out. And I said, no, you're still on, no problem. So we still did the show, and that was great. But Steven has been a supporter of ours for a couple 20 years now. And he found us when we were on a label called Rainbow Quartz Records, which was a New York/London label, who found us pretty much right after the WHTG thing with House of Vibes. And I don't know, we got some reviews in England and he responded to that. And so he put us out and was starting to put us all over the world on shows and gigs and good tour support and nice hotels. It was great. We're going out to Spain and England. It was wonderful. Germany was before him. But so Steven got wind of us through that. And then that's how he put out the compilation Infinite Soul Best of the Gripweeds on Wicked Cool, was through our association with Rainbow Quartz. And then Rainbow Quartz fell apart. and we went with Gem Records, which is a very much a New Jersey label, you know, with strong Jersey roots that go way back, you know. So that's how that happened. And yeah, he's been an incredible supporter of ours and has been playing many of our songs for a long period of time on that station, the Underground Garage on Sirius XM. So we owe him a lot, because there's a lot of people that would not have heard of us had it not been for his channel.
Didn't you reach a coolest song in the world status?
Many.
Many,
Yeah, we've had at least 12, and hopefully we'll have one again soon.
I wonder how many people were coming up to you on the cruise, like name checking the songs. It had to have been.
Yeah, and we've had people coming up to us saying, well, you're probably not going to get to Winnipeg, Canada, which is where Neil Young is from.
Yeah.
So he's like, we better go on the cruise to see you. And we're so glad we did. And so many people did that. They were like, oh, we're from Alaska. We're from, you know, these far off corners of the country, and came on this cruise because they figured it was a chance for them to see us live. You know, it's hard to get out there on the road these days. It's really expensive, and you got to make a real effort to get out there, you know, which we do. We do our best. So.
You know, you mentioned Neil Young. You know, I do hear some Crosby, Stills and Nash and Gene Clark. I was going to mention that to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, the song Promise of the Real.
Oh, yeah. That's
Neil
staccato opening, that guitar opening. And it's such a cool opening.
Wow, you know it. All right.
Yeah.
That song, the song the title Promise of the Real actually came from Neil Young. I had the idea for a promise. You made a promise, blah, blah, blah. And I kept thinking the promise of the real, meaning something very meaningful. And I don't know why I thought of it, but it was one of Neil Young's backing bands called The Promise of the Real.
Promise of the Real.
And we thought, hopefully we won't get in trouble for this, but it's just a song title, you know.
I think he'll like it.
Hopefully he'll like it. But I don't know if the song has that much to do with him. It's more like almost like Fleetwood Mac in a way.
Like an homage?
Yeah, I mean, it's that song is very real. It came from a real circumstance between Kristen and I. And it was right at the time when we started dating. And it was one of those deals where she wanted a committed relationship and I was still kind of casual and going, well, I don't know. And maybe we'll just keep it loose, and she didn't want to. And so I went off to California and I was doing some music thing, and I come back, and as I was in California, I was starting to think she was really cool, and what am I doing? And, you know, why don't I do this? And so came back and I basically said that to her, and we picked right back up, and that's when our relationship flowered. But the song Promise of the Real is from that. So it's a duet between two people who are having an issue or a problem, an argument, whatever you want to call it. And the idea is, you made a promise, you know, you promised me that you would be faithful, and you didn't deliver, and why, and all this kind of stuff is in those lyrics. And so at the end, there is a kind of getting together of this couple, which is Kristen and I, and we both sing the song. So
sometimes I think musicians need other musicians to be in a relationship because you guys understand each other.
I think you're right. I don't know.
That's what I think.
I mean, that's one thing that is very handy in when you do out of town shows, or when you go, you know, on a cruise or something. She's there, and she's always there with me, and so's my brother. And it's really nice to do that. And I had a moment on stage, actually, on the cruise, where I was thinking, this is the place for me to be. Good crowd. I'm with my family, my friend Dave on bass. And, you know, this is right. And then playing the music I love, and this is a great thing. And so I had one of those moments right on stage, you know, and it just made it all even better.
Now, I think Soulbender is a great way to start the album. I also think it's a heck of a way to start a set. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know it's the single, but it's like, it just sounds like the kind of song that you just kind of come out and you just play it, you know, like how Aerosmith comes out and they play the first song on the album.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't actually done that yet because we've wanted to, first of all, get comfortable with songs we know. And second of all, say, we have a new album and here it is with Soulbender, bang, you know. So we haven't actually done that yet, but that might be, you know, that might happen as we go, as we get more comfortable. We've only played the song a handful of times, even though we recorded it. the recording was done in sort of the way an artist makes a sculpture. You know, it starts with the plaster, which is me on drums. Then, and actually that song, Soul Bender, started with me as a demo. I wrote the song. I was up here in upstate New York where I am. I took a bike ride. I came back. I had the song. I put it down as fast as I could into my phone. I started playing a guitar part to get the chords. And I looked down and I have this pedal, this fuzz pedal called a Soul Bender fuzz pedal. I looked down, I'm like, wow, she's my soul bender, you know? I started singing that and I'm thinking like, well, I'll just replace that later. I just got to get this down so I know what it is. Kristen hears my little demo and she's like, no, Soul Bender has to stay. That's really cool. Like, all right, you know, cool. So I do the demo, play drums, guitar, bass, send it to the rest of the band, say, what do you think? They're like, yeah, we love it. Let's do it. So let's work off of your demo and start building it up, you know? So I did that. And the only thing that stayed from my demo was my drums. Everything else was replaced. We brought in Dave. Actually, I think my guitar part stayed as well. One guitar I played. But the other band members added their stamp and said, especially like Kristen, well, Rick had a lot to do also. Rick did the solo on that. So they all went away and figured out their parts and came in, and I'm like, great, I love it. You know, and sometimes you go in the studio, it's like, well, I like that part, but maybe you could add this. And it's really an artistic thing that happens with us in the studio producing, because we produce ourselves and there's nobody there. Nobody else is there to tell us.
I feel like you've been doing this a long time and you have all the equipment, you know what works.
Yeah. We have all the equipment. House of Vibes became a studio out of that album. Actually, during that album, it became an actual commercial studio that we run. So I do all kinds of productions. So at this point, I know what to do. I kind of know how to produce a record. And I've had some incredible musical experiences with people like the Smithereens, talk about a New Jersey band, who I actually produced a couple of times, a bunch of times. And when you work with people like that, it really raises up your game to be better than amateur or bar band. You become like, you got to raise up your game because you're with people that have made real records that have charted. And all of a sudden you get that sort of, it rubs off. I worked with Mark Lindsay. It rubs off, you know, a guy who had these top 10 records in the 60s and 70s. And he brings in something and all of a sudden you start thinking like they do. And, oh, well, this has got to be more in tune and that's got to be better. We need an intro that's snappy so we get right to the song, things like that you don't think about until a producer comes up and says, you know, could be a little bit sharper, blah, 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 you know? So now I'm that guy. And I get to do that. And everybody's kind of at a good level of knowledge to do it as well. So that's in a nutshell how we approach the recording of Soul Bender. But then there's the lyrics. And if you're interested, I'll tell you a little bit about the lyrics.
Oh, I love listening about the lyrics. And of course, the way, you know, it's funny how the record starts and how it ends, like the final track.
It just stops.
It's such a Procol Harum.
Oh, that. Oh, you mean Love Comes in Different Ways?
Oh my God,
oh,
yes.
Yeah, right. There's a lot that goes into that one.
There's a lot that's in this record.
Let me tell you real quick about Soul Bender.
Okay.
I wrote that song after we did a show in New York City. Well, I wrote the lyrics. I had the song, I had the demo, She's My Soul Bender, and then I had literally dummy lyrics that were in some cases nonsense, just to get blah, 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 you know, just that, you know, to get through the verses. I'm like, I know I'm going to come up with something. We did a show in New York in the East Village, and the scene was so groovy, to, you know, coin a term that really should be used more now. It was so cool. And I just instantly thought about it and came home the next day and the Velvet Underground documentary was on. So I'm watching the Velvet Underground. I'm thinking about this great show we did in New York with these kind of, you know, sort of cross-dressers and stuff. It was just this groovy scene. It was really cool. So I'd never done this. I started writing a poem while I'm watching the show. And these two influences got into this poem and I wrote it. And it's on the back of our album cover, actually, the poem I wrote. And then I took that poem and I took various ideas from it and crafted the lyrics for Soul Bender. And that's how it came up.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, Kurt, you talked earlier about working with producers. Now, I know this is very, very recent. You worked with Brian Wilson.
Yeah, I did.
You recorded a song on the Brian Wilson tribute
Yes.
record with.
Well, I didn't record it with Brian.
No. You recorded the song for the tribute, but you did work with Brian, right?
I did. Yes. Yeah, yes, I did. Yeah.
What can you tell me about that? Not a lot of people can say they did that, especially around New Jersey.
True. Well, I happened to.
Well, not named Bruce, but.
You're right. Yeah. I was friendly with a guy named Richard X. Heyman, who I played drums for. He is a solo artist. He had a major label deal on Sire, and the guy who produced that album was Andy Paley. Andy Paley was a really good friend of Brian Wilson's. And Andy comes to New York with Brian, and there's a movie, a film called I Just Wasn't Made for These Times that was directed by Don Was. And so they had this whole thing. There was going to be a Q&A, I think, but a show at Lincoln Center, and they needed a band. Lincoln Center, New York, need a band. I get the call. Like, wow. At the time, I'm literally unemployed. So I had nothing on the calendar. So I'm like, all right. I think I can make time to go play with Brian Wilson. So I did. So we go into New York, right into Midtown. We have to go there for a practice. And, you know, the fighting the traffic all the way. Oh, no, we're late. You know, and we get in there. We finally get there. We knock on his door. It's a suite. And his wife answers. His new wife, Melinda, answers. We go in. And a bedroom over here, nice sitting room with a piano in it over there. And a nice view of the city. The Carlisle Hotel, pretty nice. And I look over, seeing Brian at this sort of table in front and say, hey, Brian, how you doing? And then behind him is Paul Schaefer on the piano.
Wow.
Next to him, Don Was on the stand-up bass. I'm like, my mind is being blown. Danny Hutton from Three Dog Night. Billy West, who did the Ren and Stimpy voices and all kinds of stuff. Real great guy on guitar. The Paley brothers were there, Andy and his brother. And Richard X and I and Kristen show up. And we're like, well, what are we doing here? You know, look at this room. So we go in there, and this is just so cool. And it's a memory that every now and then, you know, memories are funny because you don't really know, did it really happen or not? Maybe I dreamed it, but I know it happened. There's pictures. So I'm in the hotel room, and they start going, well, we need some backup vocals. We're doing California Girls. We're doing Do It Again, Warmth of the Sun. We need some backing vocals. Can you guys sing? I'm like, well, yeah. So come on over here and sit next to Brian. So I'm kneeling in front of Brian. And he's going, okay, now you sing this part, and you sing that part. And I'm like, oh, yeah, California Girls, all that stuff. Wish they all could be. All of it. So we're doing all these songs. It's so cool, you know. If that's not enough, you know, it's like my mind's already blown. We're getting up to leave. And we're all walking out. Okay, dress rehearsal at Lincoln Center in an hour. We'll see you there. So I'm getting out of the room, and Brian goes, hey, stops me dead. He goes, can I borrow $5?
No.
I'm like, now the irony was not lost on me because I was flat broke. It probably took all I had to get into the city. Yeah, I do believe I still had a $5 bill in my pocket. I'm like, well, Brian, you're one of my absolute idols. Of course, I'll give you $5. No problem. I think at the time they were worried that he would buy cigarettes with it, and they didn't want him to have money. So I may have enabled him, but nonetheless, the show was amazing. I got to talk to Brian as best you could. Brian was very sort of standoffish in person, but man, what a memory. Just incredible. And I had grown up listening to his music and a huge Beach Boys fan, and a lot of stuff vocally really, you know, did a lot for me and inspired me, especially on this album. To go back to the album, something like Column of Air was very much vocally inspired by the Beach Boys and Brian to hit those high notes. For one thing, I was channeling Brian to do it.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And luckily we got to, Gem Records has a series called Gem Celebrates blank. Jem celebrates John Lennon. Jem celebrates Brian Wilson. So we got to do a couple of Beach Boys songs. One of them was You're So Good to Me. And that was such a fun song to sing. And we got to sort of put our own stamp on it. And it was so successful for us, it became a coolest song on Steven's show. So we play it live because it's 2 minutes long. And it's just such a, and we didn't know it was going to be such a, kind of a big deal with Brian passing, that we would, kind of make a nice little tribute to him, So it was really nice to do, and still is nice to play.
I love that story. I love that so much, Kurt. Kurt, I have a question with you having your own studio. Do you have any vintage equipment that you like to record on?
Oh, yeah, all of it.
What's your favorite?
You mean instrument or equipment?
Studio secrets. For getting that warm sound that you get on the records.
Oh, well, tubes always help. Tube gear. Something like, a Universal Audio 1176 or LA2A compressor. Those are nice.
Where'd you find those?
Yeah, well, Mark Lindsay came in with one. We got to use that and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, the vintage gear is really great. It can be very quirky. You kind of have to fix it now and then. But there's a lot of stuff out there now, reissue, like especially Universal Audio has a great equipment, which we use a lot of. So actually, most of our gear, our outboard gear, a lot of it is vintage, like reissue gear. But our console is old. That's from the 80s. It's 40 years old this year. And we got it from Jan Hammer.
No way.
Mahavishnu Orchestra, and Jeff Beck tracked through our console. So that right there, we were afraid to clean it because we're like, maybe there's some of his skin in the legs,
That is funny.
Jan Hammer's not so bad either.
Oh, yeah.
On our console that he recorded Miami Vice soundtrack. So it was like a top 10 record, which is kind of nice to have a console that recorded a top 10 record, let alone that Jeff Beck played through, It's cool. It's just very cool. We're just blessed. We're very lucky to do all this. I tell that to Kristen every now and then, it's like, we get to make these songs up. I go for a run or something. I come back with a song in my head, make it real by singing it into a phone. Then it becomes a guitar part. Then it becomes a demo. Then it becomes a band song. Then a recording. Then we play it live. It's all such a buzz to do each and every one of those little things that we do,
Well, I know the record came out on Friday, and it's such a nice package. It's like there's a poster. That's so good. That's insane. That's awesome. Yeah. You don't get posters too often anymore.
No, but this cover we thought was really deserving of one.
Oh, yeah.
It was really kind of lucky, the whole thing, the way it came about with this album cover. Because I also do graphics, and this was my design.
Wow.
Yeah, and my original concept for the album was much different than that. It was, I saw a lot of white space and almost black and white pictures of us with halos around them and things, like colored things. And I just couldn't pull it off. I couldn't get it to work where it was an album cover. I try as I might, I just couldn't make it work. So I'm like, all right, what else can I do with this? And we had these interesting pictures of us sort of in these like poses, not normal, which we got from a favorite album of ours by the Byrds called Younger Than Yesterday. We just did, during the photo shoot, we're like, hey,
let's try it.
Let's do that. So we took individual shots of us like that. So put them in this thing. And I started going, how about a building? How about some weeds for the grip weeds? And then it just started to fill in, a little flower for Cynthia in the front, because that's the song, Flowers for Cynthia.
I love that song, by the way.
So that's how the album came up. It was just like, I built it as a collage. We always wanted to do a collage as well. So I quickly shifted gears from white space to a collage. And then it started to look very much like a, late 60s album cover to me. And I knew I was on the right track. But if you look at this album cover, all of the things in it, all the objects, the bird, they're all in the lyrics, most of them. And so we kind of felt like we created an album that you could play the album, put the album on, and look at the album cover and go, oh, man.
And visualize it like we used to.
Like we used to, and what do we, oh, there's a poem. Oh, what are all these things on it? And leave it to fans of the music to kind of like find the little clues that we put in it.
The little Easter eggs, like Taylor Swift does.
Yeah. Why not? You got this space. I mean, we're back to albums now. I love that, so it's very cool to do.
Which is awesome. You mentioned the birds. If you could go back in time, who would you perform with? The birds, the zombies, the hollies, who?
Ooh, wow.
I know.
Each band, they all have their own little problems. I can imagine going up with the birds and them all fighting, or the Who and it being too, well, what am I going to do up there? Take Keith Moon's place? No. Sing? Take over Roger Daltrey? No, I don't think so. That's the thing. I think those bands are so perfect as they are. I'm happy to be in a band that draws from them, that I can control. So I think I'd like to go back in time and see all those groups, but I think I wouldn't want to go and play with them. I'll just sit in the audience and enjoy it. How's that?
Well, Kurt, we all enjoy watching the Gripweeds perform, which brings me to my next question.
Yes.
When are the next dates? I know you just had a couple. And when are the next dates that we can see you play around the city or the area? Or maybe, I know it's hard to tour.
Yeah, well, we're just putting together something for the Boston, New Hampshire, New England kind of area. And that's going to be in September. I think everything's going to start coming up in September area, September, October. And we haven't announced any of the shows yet because they're still being put together. But there are shows coming up. And in the meantime, we're going to do a bunch of music videos. So
nice.
That's our next thing. We have literally been working. We finished this album in like late March. And we had to do this cover art, master it, put everything together, get both the CD and the album pressed in time for the cruise, figure out how to play these songs for the cruise. Then after the cruise, we came back and we make all kinds of promises to people, our fans, on our website. We have gripweeds.com is our artist direct store and website. And we have deluxe editions that we put out on there of almost every album we do. We do a special exclusive deluxe edition. In this case, you get a full CD. That's 24 songs. That's the companion to this record. One song that didn't make it, a bunch of songs that are like instrumental mixes of these songs, demos, live versions. We went really far to get this one done. And not only that, but you get a link to a booklet. And it's this 34-page booklet that we just finished on Saturday.
Saturday? No way.
Yeah, one day after the release, we're like, we got to get this done. So we got it done. And then it was like proofreading, we finally got it all finished. And you can download that. There's a QR code on the back of the album. If you buy it, you have to get it from our website to get it. But we're very appreciative to our fans. And we try to offer really good value for whatever we put out there. So it's like an 80-minute long CD practically, and this booklet. And you get a poster if you buy the Super Deluxe and things like that. So that's what we've been doing. It's been constant work up until yesterday, pretty much, where we finally had a day in the sun, which was really nice. So it's been a lot of work. People don't realize, I was telling you a little bit about the process, how we develop a song and how we record that song and build it up like a sculpture. And we don't hold back. We're very much like, we're doing what we feel the song needs. And how do we make a great song that can be heard, not let alone on the radio, but that somebody's going to be interested to play and be engaged. We want to, hook the listener as much as we can. it's so easy to click away now, you know?
It is.
So it is, it really is.
It is.
So, so as I'm saying, you know, we do all this work to make these songs as good as they can be, not thinking about how to play them live. So then we get to, like, take a song like Soul Bender. It's probably got 8 guitars on it, you know, and crazy stuff that's like slides like Pink Floyd, and, you know, Mellotron comes in, and, you know, and voices and stuff. And we can't play all those parts live. But so what we've got to do after the record is done is figure out, okay, now that we've recorded all this, how do we adapt it to the live setting with 2 guitars, bass drums, and sometimes keyboards? How do we do it? So we sit down and we try to figure out, okay, what's the most important parts? We got to cover everything and make it kind of work. And it's like, it's kind of a chance, really, if there's anybody out there, if you know, like Live at Leeds, The Who, that album, huge album for The Who, right after they did Tommy. Tommy was their rock opera with, you know, studio animal, a studio recording with voices and everything. And then they go out, 1 guitar, bass, drums, and try to pull this thing off. And it sounds like riveting rock, you know, just this incredible. So we're trying to do that, really, is take our studio creations and turn them into a riveting rock live thing, you know, and 2 guitars, bass, drums, basic rocket, you know, and but make sure those vocals are in tune and on point. You know, you got to have that if you're in the Grip Weeds. We do vocals. So, you know, so that is really the hard thing. And we've got to rehearse to get that, make that happen. And we recorded the rehearsals in this case. And it was a big shortcut, because we were able to go back and listen and go, wow, that guitar part doesn't work. You got to change that. Or, let's tune those vocals a little bit. Had we not had them recorded, it would have taken us probably a bunch of shows to figure that out. So we had a very short period where we learned these songs, and we recorded them. And those recordings, some of them are on this deluxe edition at gripweeds.com. There's a plug.
I'm sure the fans can't wait to get their hands on it.
It's really cool. We're really proud of this whole thing. You know, I mean, it's really like, but it's like it starts with a song in your head. You know, for my case, it just starts like, I got this thing and I'm hearing the whole song. I'm hearing the sound and I got to get it out. And that's the process, that translation of like the mind's eye imagination to the guitar. What key? To the band, how are they going to play it? And then to the studio, and how are we going to make this work? And then by the time you finally get it all back, it's like, wow, you know, we kind of did something pretty cool. And the artwork, we add to that, a little step of that, and boom, 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 stair steps, you know. And hopefully if you make the right decisions and you listen, not only to the music, but to people and your band members and your label going, oh, I really like that, or that could be better. And Marty Scott had a bunch of suggestions from Gem Records that we took on board because we trust him. He knows music. He loves good stuff. And he's a really good input. Music.
Huh? He's a real music fan too.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, well, he broke Cheap Trick Live at Budokan. He broke that album in the US.
Which is amazing.
Because Epic didn't want it. It was out in Japan, Epic Japan. Or Columbia, Japan, whatever it was, CBS, and they didn't option the album in America. They're like, nah, who's this Cheap Trick? We got a couple of their records here that don't sell. Why do we want their double live album? So they passed. Marty built it up into something, and then they said, oh, yeah, okay, well, we're going to option it now. So they took it back, but he broke that album. So that guy, those years, that experience, deep into it, you know, when he says something, we're like, wow, okay, well, we're going to give it a good listen. And that listen to someone outside yourself in production is what makes this work for us, because you can really get insular and like, you know, you can get very much like the artist who's got tunnel vision. Like, it's got to be just like this because this is the way I hear it. And, you know, that's a different kind of record maybe than one that other people might really like, you know. And if you just change this thing and that, and maybe the intro, make that a little bit shorter and more accessible, then you got it, you know. So listening is very important to your band, to people. And that's what makes great records, I think.
And Soulbender is a great record. It is a great record.
Your lips, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And everybody can get the record now. It's out now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
If you want to tell everybody where they can get the, can order it, gripweeds.com.
Yeah, well, I should say first off that local record stores need business, of course. And if you have a good one that you like, get the vinyl or get the CD from them. But if you want the full-on experience, actually, you could even get the CD or vinyl from the record store, then come back to us and get the deluxe edition standalone and just the CD and the booklet and get the whole thing. Or you can get everything from us. And that's at www.gripweeds.com. And click right to big Soulbender thing right on the front. Click on that. You'll get to where you need to go. And there's no pressure. It's all for fun. We're having fun here. Right, Michelle?
That's right.
This is all a good
Big shout out to our friend Randy at the Man Cave in Hightstown. He is the record store. You played there. Your record's there. They can get it there.
Yeah, and he's got copies there too because we set them up. We set him up with those, and yeah. So yeah, people they it's business that it's a very strange business these days, and everybody I guess needs a little bit of help because I don't know why, but I guess everybody's streaming. That's why we made an album cover. So you can't get this on streaming,
No, you can't.
You gotta get this little thumbnail, So, but it's the way the business is going. And I think we get out to even wider group of people with that. And hopefully, if they're like me, I'll hear something I really like on the radio. And then I'll go, wow, what's that? I'll go to, streaming. I'll listen to it. Oh, wow, I like the whole album. Well, now I'll go buy the album, So if I really like it, I'm going to go for the LP. And that's what I hope for, that people will, A, listen to it, but B, be the fan of it, take that next step and be like, oh, I got to have this in my collection. Because who knows when the power is going to go out, or not the power, but the internet. The internet goes out, you got no music. What if you're off the grid?
And you need a record player.
You need a record player.
Absolutely. Little Victrola from the 40s.
Yeah, you just crank it up and go. That's what I do.
Kurt Reil, the Gripweeds, thank you so much for coming on According to Amabile. This was a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure for me too, Michelle.
Can't wait to see you guys play again, and love to Kristen and everyone in the band.
Yeah, listen, keep up. Gripweeds.com also has our dates. And I think it's Bands in Town is another website that if you go to the Gripweeds page, whatever, and sign up for that, you'll be informed of where we're playing. And we also have our own email fan list too. And we try to keep people informed of what we're doing. So gripweeds.com, just check it out.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you so much for talking all things Gripweeds on According to Amabile. I'm Michele Amabile, According to Amabile.
Of course you are.
Yes, I am. Until next time.
All right.